Hi everyone, it's Kelly from Kelly's Bead Boutique. So I don't really talk about much on my channel other than jewelry, beads, and all things jewelry related. But one of the things that I've become a little more passionate about since I've had grandchildren is recycling. I used to be the toss away queen. I basically just tossed it away if I didn't use it. I kind of had a 2-year rule that if I didn't use it in 2 years, it was out the door. But now, since I've had grandchildren, it's got me to thinking a little bit more about helping to save the planet just one person at a time. A few months ago, we were sort of cleaning up at the store, and I came across about, I don't know, maybe a couple dozen of those old leatherette busts that we have for displays. And we haven't really used them much for the last few years in the store, but I never did throw them out. And they're all torn and they're damaged from the lights because they kind of yellow, and they really just are very unsightly. So I immediately said, well, let's just toss those. And as they were sitting at the back waiting to go into the dumpster, I thought, okay, just a minute now. If you're going to be the new recycling queen, you have to do something with these. So I grabbed them all, brought them home, and started playing. And I created these really great textures on them, and I posted it on Facebook, and everybody went wild and said, you have to show us your process. So that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to show you how to take those unsightly white fake leather display busts, and I'm going to recreate them, and they're going to be fabulous. So if you want to see what I'm doing today, come and join me. Okay, so the supplies that I'm going to be using today are one of these busts. Now this one is the kind that we use at the store, goes up into the slat wall. You can also use those taller busts that you actually would display your necklaces on, say at a craft show or whatever. It's just, it takes up a lot of room under my camera. So I thought I would show you on this. So it's exactly the same thing, a really ugly bust that we're going to make look a little bit nicer. The other thing I'm going to be using is just some tissue paper, and so the more crinkled up the better. It doesn't matter what it looks like. I'm just using this sort of parchment color because my store is sort of done in that, barnwood, antique-y kind of look. But if you've got like bright blue as your color, you could pick bright blue, whatever you want. And I've actually taken a bunch of it and pre-torn it up just to make it a little easier to work with, and I will show you that as we go along. I also have some really cheap paintbrushes that I picked up at the dollar store. You don't want anything super fancy for this because we're going to be using glue and things like that. I'm also going to be using Mod Podge. Now this is the matte one. Mod Podge is available everywhere, pretty much any kind of craft store like Michael's. I think some of the dollar stores might even have it. I know Hobby Lobby does, and you could get it on Amazon. And we don't sell any of this material. This is just strictly a demo for you guys because I thought you might enjoy it. But I did want the matte one. I didn't want a real shiny finish, but if that's all you have, then just go with it. It depends on the look you're going for. What I do like about Mod Podge is that it's completely water soluble and it seals and finishes at the same time. So love this product. And then later on in the process, we're going to be using some of this DecoArt Vintage Effect Wash. Now, I do understand through other sources that this is getting hard to find. I did get a couple of these on Amazon. I've got a turquoise color and a few other ones. This is the brown color, but you can actually use anything. You could use a watered down paint to create like a stain. If you do happen to have a tin of stain around, you could maybe try that. You kind of have to experiment a little bit. So if you couldn't find something like this, because all this is, they call it a color wash paint. So if I couldn't find this, I would literally take a dark brown, one of these acrylic kind of paints, and I would thin it out a little bit with water, and it would probably do exactly the same thing. So don't get hung up on the fact that you can't find this or that you have to go out and buy this special. This is a very forgiving technique in that you can layer and layer and layer. So we're just going to be trying a bunch of different things, but this is one of the products I am going to use. And then at the end of it, I'm going to be using a little bit of this matte acrylic paint. It's just folk art paint. This is an ivory white, and I'm going to mix it with a little bit of water to sort of just thin that down a little bit. And that's about it. I have a little cup to put some of my Mod Podge in or my paint in, whatever I'm going to use. I might just take the Mod Podge right out of the bucket there. And that is literally about it. You want to maybe keep a little piece of paper towel on the side, and we're just going to go from there. Okay, so what I do is I just take my Mod Podge and I figure out where I want to start. So I'm going to start up here, and I just kind of get brave and I plunge right in. And I'm going to go right on the sides. So now I don't do the entire piece. I just do sort of the area that I'm going to be working on at that moment. It's just really hard to hold on to if you do the entire piece. So I take a big chunk here. This is probably like, I don't know, 3 inches by 4 inches. And I'm going to take, I've got to try and figure out how to balance all this. The last time I did it, I didn't have a camera on, so I didn't have to think about it. So now, like I said, I've pre-torn some of these pieces up just to make it easier for filming. And I like it when they have some of the sort of rough edges, but it doesn't really matter how that goes on there because this is going to get layered multiple times. So I'm just going to stick that on there, and if it bubbles up, that's even better because that's what we want. Now I didn't put any back here, so let me just dunk a little bit. I'm trying to make sure that I am on frame here, and I've got such a bright light I can't see, but I'm really hoping that I am doing a good job there. Okay, so you see how it's kind of crinkled and stuff in there? That's exactly what we want. We don't want this all perfect. I want kind of a rustic sort of look there. So I laid some of the Mod Podge down, and then I put a little bit more on my brush, and then I kind of come in over top. Now I've still got some areas here that haven't been filled in, so I have a piece here that I'm just going to pull some of that off. Now you're not trying to like make it look all perfect or anything. So now I have covered my work surface here in just some paper that we have. My husband has these huge rolls of paper, and I covered it because you'll get Mod Podge everywhere. So best to cover it with something. Don't use newspaper because that will transfer into the Mod Podge. So I'm just going to go around. Now, if you're all freaked out about what the back's going to look like, you can cut this and make it look perfect on the back, but I just trimmed it off because we have these up against slat wall, so it doesn't really matter. So I just kind of turned it over and kind of go like that. Depending on how your booth is set up or wherever you're setting your pieces up, if you do see the back, you may want to cover this with a piece of paper at the end and cardstock or whatever to cover up what we're, sort of the mess that we're going to make. This is all about being sort of creative and just kind of going with it. Now, I don't particularly like those kind of flat edges, but they do work really well if you're going to go around the back there. So I'm just going to take a little bit of my Mod Podge and go on the back. And now you won't really see the flat edges, so, again, don't worry about it. So I'm just going to lay that on there. Put a little bit more Mod Podge on my brush. How many times can we say Mod Podge in one video, huh? Okay, so there we go. We got that little piece on there. So now I'm just going to lay down another one. And you can see that I'm layering right over top. I want that sort of layered look on there. I don't want to have just one layer. Now you don't want to go crazy and layer 4 or 5 things on top because it'll never dry. Eventually it will, but I do want this to dry in the next little while so that I can show you the next stage of it. So basically this is all I'm going to be doing. I'll come up around here so I can show you what happens up here. I'll do that whole top. I love doing this kind of stuff. I find it actually really relaxing and cathartic. I don't really have to think too much. I just kind of play and do. And so I find that is a fun process. So I'm just going to, I think I'll put a little bit more down here because I know I'm going to end up coming down here. And I'll just lay that one over here. And I'm sure there are other materials that you could use as far as, what to put on top here. This is just kind of what I had. I'm just going to make sort of a rough edge on this one. I don't want that straight edge. I'll just lay that one kind of on an angle. The only thing like I mentioned before, is I wouldn't use newspaper because the newsprint will bleed on on it. And when you get the Mod Podge on, you'll end up with newsprint all over the place. So now when I'm coming around on these sort of rounded corners, I'm actually kind of coming in and pressing that in a little bit. I don't really want it to bubble up too much. And you may find that this lifts a little bit. But you know, I just kind of feel like a lot of that sort of stuff just adds to the charm. I've got this little piece there, so I'm just going to stick that there for no reason other than I had it. So you can see how this is starting to take shape now. Come around here and add some more. So you definitely don't want to buy a little bottle of Mod Podge. Now you're not going to use, you know, a ton of it or anything, but you are going to use a fair amount, so you don't want to run out. So I just kind of use my brush and push that in. And you know, sometimes on corners it can get a little challenging, so I just kind of make sure I've got enough Mod Podge on my brush and kind of smush, being the technical term. Smush it in there. And I just keep coming back, and if I see something bubbling up, then I just add to it. I'm going to tuck this back. See how it's kind of coming up there? So I'm just going to lay down a little bit of Mod Podge and then smush it down. If you don't have any Mod Podge underneath, it will often lift up. Now, people have asked me if you can do this technique on the ones that are kind of the black flocked ones, and I'm afraid I don't have an answer for that because I've never tried it. I'm probably guessing not, because the flocking or material or whatever, it's kind of, it's like a, what is that? It's not a fleece, it's I'm having a moment. I'm a senior's moment. I can't remember what that stuff's called. Okay, in the comments below, what is that stuff called? I'll remember, but not while I'm doing this video, obviously. Anyway, I don't think that you can use that because I just think it's going to leave, you know, lint and stuff everywhere. So what I would probably do if you have a really beat up one is I would try and peel back some of that fabric and see what's underneath it. There's probably something similar to this, like a cardboard form, and you could probably do this right on top of the cardboard. So velvet, there's the word I'm looking for, but see, I don't remember anything, but I usually remember it at some point. Oh my goodness. So see how you can see different shades and tones, like we've got light and dark, and that's exactly what I wanted. I didn't want this to be all one note, one color. I just find that that's kind of a boring look. So that's why I went with things the way that I did. So I'm going to take this piece and pop that on there. So and the beauty of this is when you lay it down to dry, if you don't like what you see, if you come back and you go like, oh, see right there, there's a little bit of a hole. So there's just a, you know, I didn't get anything on there. So I will come back later, you know, if I didn't like it, and I just lay a piece down and just add some more on it. That's the beauty of this. If there's something that's not working for you, or if you feel like you need to add some more, then just come back and do that. So if I don't like the way this sits up top here, maybe I wanted some more color up here, I'll just plunk down another piece and layer that up. So pretty much, I think this is about what I would want. I might lay a few strips here and there, just for some added color and texture. Maybe a little piece down here. I tend to like the little bit darker look than the really light. So I sort of assess all that. And then I just make sure I go around with another thin coat on any of the areas that are really popping up, but you don't want to oversaturate this because it really will not dry nicely. So I'm just going to go around the edges, make sure everything's kind of coming where I want it to. Okay, so that's where we're sitting right now. So I will take this brush and I will rinse it out and dry it off because this is water soluble, so that's a nice thing. Now, you want to make sure when you are drying this that you're going to take something like a little bowl or something like that and lay it on top of it. because if I put that right directly on the table, it's likely going to stick. So I'm just going to let that dry, and I will be back with you when it's completely dry. Okay, so we're back for the second part of our demo here. So you can see how this is looking. And I think this has been drying for about 3 hours, and this is easily dry enough to be able to carry on with what we're doing. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is take some of this vintage color wash, and this is the scary part because you never know what's going to happen. So I'm just going to sort of paint it all over. Now you could definitely just leave it just like that. If I was going to leave it that way, I would probably put a second coat of Mod Podge on there and then just call it a day. But I do want to put some of this on. So what you do is you just sort of paint it on, and this is where your little piece of paper towel comes in handy, and you're just going to wipe it off. I know it seems a little strange to wipe it on and wipe it off, but I don't want a super dark coat on there. So you can see that just kind of adds to that little bit of a vintage look. But again, all these little colors just kind of add to the uniqueness of this. So I'm just going to do all of that, and I'm going to remember that I have sides on there. And this is a really nice product to work with. It's a bit of a gel, and it does dry fairly fast. So I don't want to do the whole thing. I just want to do bits and pieces of it. And again, you can layer this. So if you don't like what you did, you can add more. And there's, you know, it's just about being creative and playing around and not being too hung up on perfection, which if you've watched my videos, you know that that's hard for me because I am a perfectionist. So this is actually a really great thing for me to just get me out of my comfort zone. Okay, so that's where we're at right now. I'm just going to let this dry for a few minutes, and you can see that's given it a really nice aged look, and you could leave it just like that, but we're going to take it one step further. Okay, so now we have our antique look, and I really like the way that it looks like that, but what I'm going to do is add a little bit of white paint to some water here and just kind of stir this around. And really all I'm making is a really, really light wash, so I don't want very much in here. So I'm just going to stir that around because I don't want it to be, I don't want like white on top of it. What I want to do is I'm just going to test a little bit and then see what happens. So yeah, that's about what I want. So it's going to go a long ways. So I'm just going to sort of streak that along and then rub it off. And you can see what that does. It gives it just a little bit of a whitewash look, which sort of tones down the darkness of that other wash that we used. You can leave it dark, you can make it white, you can do whatever you like, but I wanted just a little bit of a toned down look. So, and I'm just using paper towel here, it's not wet. And I didn't even really let that other coat dry. I just kind of came right back in on top of it. So, and I'm not going crazy with this. I'm just putting a little bit on because you can always add more, but I'm not so sure about taking it off. So, and if you want, you can sort of do some areas that you think need a little bit more. Maybe up here could use a bit more. And if you take it a bit too far and you think, oh goodness, that's way too white, I wish that it had some more dark in, you can layer that other stain back on again, or whatever you're going to use. But that just kind of adds another dimension on here that I really like. So there we go, there's our finished piece. Now what I probably would do just for a final step is I would take another coat of Mod Podge and I would just lay that down all over here once this is fully dried. It's still a little wet from the 2 coats of finishing paint that I put on there. So I'd let that dry for about an hour, just put one more final coat of Mod Podge, and then we're done. It's fully sealed and it's not going to change color or anything like that. So I think that that is a really nice change. I'm just going to move this out of the way and show you. I have an old one here. So this is what we started with. Ugly, it's got dents and scrapes and things like that, and it's kind of yellowed. It's hard to tell on there, but it is very yellowed. And now this is what we've ended up with. So I hope you enjoyed this video. It's really a fun process just to play around. It's just be creative as you want. Use different colors. Just have some fun with it. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to give me a like, leave me a comment. Let me know if you're going to give this a try, because I would love to see what you guys create. You can always pop pictures onto my Facebook page because I do love to see what everybody's up to. And please make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I want to thank you so much for watching, and we will see you on the next one.